the Republicans blocked the release of the Epstein papers, lists, whatever. Okay, this isn't what we're looking for. Just give it a minute for a few people to jump on. Oh, I know what I should put in this. Sorry, stay with me, people. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we're going to talk about this. Appropriate music in the background. We're going to talk about, that's the, yeah, there we go. Frequently you see this done by population, demographics of race, income, things like that. This is religion. Okay? So I think your purple is primarily Catholic. The blue above my head is Lutheran. This is LDS, Mormon. And this giant thing is evangelical. And my first comment to you is that is basically the Confederacy. And I was going to do this on Sunday, like I frequently do, but I'm really just recording this to grab it and throw it up on Substack because TikTok doesn't push me out like it used to. What happened last night with the Republicans refusing to vote to release what is probably truly the proof positive of a deep state. It's not the military-industrial complex. Okay, we've had that for 70 years. It's not Wall Street. It's not George Soros. It's not the Koch brothers. And so I'm going to take a few minutes here, and we're going to go through what just happened to MAGA last night. Right? This is the core. This is the MAGA homeland. Let me walk you through this a little bit. Catholic, by the way, I'm like half Catholic, half German Lutheran, so I can jump sides in my brain and give you both ideas. According to Kevin Phillips, the biggest swing vote in America are not Scandinavian, they have to be German. Lutherans. It's good, we're playing a little Wagner, getting a little German with it. This is how Trump won in 2016, right? That, what's that woman's name that worked for him? They ran up here and they stole the Rust Belt in Wisconsin and Minnesota, and nobody believed it was possible, right? This is like Walter Mondale land up here. The other big swing state is where I'm from, Western PA, which is very Catholic, very Orthodox. Not a lot of evangelicals here. There's some, in the town that I'm in, they build a big church, as they always do, out on the edge of town. It has to be big, right? Looked at it very strongly. Evangelicals love bigness. They don't really aspire to these old European churches that are throughout the Rust Belt. There are these gorgeous churches frequently made by German immigrants and Irish immigrants. They've been pretty much abandoned. Nobody really goes to those things anymore. They're expensive to upkeep. They're not big enough. There's no parking. Blah, blah, and the theology is different too. But we're going to get into that a little bit later. This isn't like a religious studies class. But what just happened is, with July 4th, 2025, the big beautiful bill, $170 billion for irregular paramilitaries. That's the way to think of them. Nobody really knows who ICE answers to. And remember, ICE came out of 9/11. ICE is not like, doesn't go back to Eisenhower and Operation Wetback and stuff. ICE, like the Department of Homeland Security, came out of 9/11. So some of us who take a strong reading on this believe that the evangelicals have created something like a coup with Trump through Project 2025, the Supreme Court, the Big Beautiful Bill, etc. And they have just, dramatic music, thank you. The evangelicals have just woken up to feeling completely betrayed. So, like, the previous rebels that are now the new rebels, I've called it the Neo-Confederacy for 4 years. It's like the end of Gone with the Wind, right? Just woke up and said this morning, and like, oh my, OMG, it's our own team that's been blocking the release of this. And of course, we've all seen the pictures of Epstein and Trump together, and Epstein said that Trump said three things. I just saw this in the last couple of days. Said, A, Trump was his best friend for 2 years. B, Trump is an excellent real estate salesman. Salesman, not developer, not financier, salesman. And 3, outside of real estate, he knows nothing. So some of this is very critical of evangelicals, and I want to start there, and then we're going to move away from that. So on Sunday, I usually do these things. I was going to do 1,000 Years Together and put the Palestinian Christ head behind me and talk about things related to that. And then I watched this video, and if you DM me, I'll tell you where I got it. It's a TikToker who started to talk about the rapture, and who explained that the rapture doesn't work anywhere here. Okay? Now, the LDS Church I would describe as very, very, very Zionist. But that's a whole nother Guinness. The evangelicals just woke up to something is deeply rotten in the state of Denmark. And they are the biggest perpetrators of it. They have coddled it. They have given it succor. They have given it a core 35% of the population that Trump used to beat a very silly, horrible, no-good candidate named Kamala Harris. But this TikToker brought up the question of the rapture. And he, in the way that I would enjoy, that I caught my eyes, he said, where does this come from? When did the rapture dialogue begin? As I talked to an Episcopalian pastor from Mississippi this morning, he clearly knows the story of the Schofield Bible a little bit better than me. Now, the closest you could get to the rapture might be, if you've never seen it, you Christian, non-Christian, non-believer, literary person, etc., etc. And if you see the movie Magdalene with Joaquin Phillips and Rooney something, or Mara Rooney or Runa Mara or something like that, and the character that plays Judas is waiting for the kingdom of God, and because his wife was either unalived or died or whatever, and he wants to get back to his wife, and he believes that the message of Christ is this return of heaven and earth will be united kind of a thing. So that's probably the quickest way you can find something that's like the rapture in Christian theology and Christian literature. But from there, it gets much, much weirder. And we have this thing like we saw with Ted Cruz. We hear it all the time in American political landscape and religious landscape, that he who blesses Israel will be blessed. This is heresy. This is Christian heresy. And that's why I'm doing the map for you. Okay? Any Lutheran theologian would tell you that everything that surrounds the rapture is heresy. All Catholics would just roll their eyes at the whole thing. Like this has no, the rubber doesn't hit the road with traditional Catholic or Christian ideas, whether you Calvin, Luther, St. Thomas Aquinas, Augustine, what have you. Karl Barth or somebody like that. And the rapture has, I would describe that as these, and the relationship to Zionism has very powerful, for lack of a better term, narcissistic tendencies. We are going to be raptured. If you go to a Catholic priest and say, "Are Catholics certain of their salvation?" It says no. And of course, we have a little bit of a difference with the Lutherans on the whole salvation by faith, not by works thing, and that's for your theology class. So they have this whole scheduled thing of the Messiah is coming through the rebuilding of the third temple and the rapture and all this Armageddon language. And so here's what I want to tell you. Here's what the evangelicals are going through. I got 3 pieces to work on. The first is evangelical Schofield Bible rapture thinking is Christian heresy. It's heresy. Like, I could go to Harvard Divinity School, or Chris Hedges, who's a I think went to Harvard Divinity School and is a minister. I don't think he practices anymore, but he's trained that way. He would tell you that this is not only a heresy, but a dangerous, violent justification for Gaza, for the Ukraine, for the war on terror, for Libya, for Syria, for Afghanistan, for this one, for this one, for this one, for this one. And now, and we'll get to this at the end, now we've created this new $170 billion paramilitary group, which, as the Drudge Report, here's the Drudge Report, just before I pulled this up. Here's the headline off the Drudge Report. Agents now questioning kids at batting practice. This is in some ways scarier than the Civil War. Gangs of men in wool uniforms chasing each other around the Shenandoah Valley. No. These are paramilitaries that are going to go after your kids at baseball practice. And if he looks Hispanic and says the same thing, maybe he'll fucking disappear. And when you go to the police station, or I don't know, the ICE station, or what have you, you may disappear. Evangelicalism is a heresy. Okay? Conveniently, this works for everybody. Now let's do Zionism. So here's the book, folks. The Jewish Wars, Flavius Josephus. He was a Jewish general and diplomat, and then became very, very close to the Roman emperors, and wrote a history that is required reading in every, like, Roman History 101. That's one of the 10 books you read. And if I remember right, there's a good bit of it about Christianity and Christ and Pilate and so forth. There's a handful of those secular works that reference, I think they sometimes call them the Galilean or something like that, or the Nazarene or something like that. So after the destruction of the temple and the diaspora, and Jews moved from beyond the Pale of Russia to Spain to Turkey to Ethiopia, and so Judaism is not a race. That's just Mickey Mouse. My center in prep school was a red-headed, freckled, 6'2" Jewish guy from New York who looked like he was Irish. But anyways, for 2,000 years, the rabbis taught we're not going back to the Holy Land. We're not going to rebuild the temple. If you go into a Christian church or a Catholic church that does communion, there's a tabernacle. It's like this shiny gold thing or brass or something, and there's doors on it, and you open it up, and inside is the Eucharist, right? That's what Christians hold dear. If you go into a temple and you open the tabernacle, there's the Torah. It used to be a scroll. I think they still use it in a scroll for religious ceremonies. So everything that's happening today with Zionism was considered heresy for 2,000 years, up until a atheist named Theodor Herzl created this nationalistic project which we know and love as Zionism. I love this. This is very Jewish humor. You have to allow me to digress. So this is in the late 19th century, and everything had these nationalistic, racial. Nietzsche called it I think he called it the Great Race Swindle or something like that. Anyway, somebody approached his mother and told him what he was up to, and she said, "I want my son to be a good German boy." So, just as you stare at this map and think what it means to have a religion and have a nationality, Mrs. Herzl was on the other side of that argument. And then Ben-Gurion was an atheist. Okay, so we have a so-called Jewish project being run by atheists. Zionism is a heresy. It's a Jewish heresy. It answers to no one. Just like the evangelicals all woke up and went, how could this be that we're here to take down the deep state, but all the people we voted for are not going along with that? Then the third partner of the war on terror is Sheikh Imran Hussein refers to them as Dajjal's warriors. I'm sorry to laugh because this is ISIS. This is Al-Qaeda. And we were introduced to this with the 6'5" guy on dialysis in a cave in Afghanistan. By the way, the general that was in charge of finding him, that ran the 10th Mountain Division, grew up in this house that I'm sitting in right now, which sort of concentrates the mind. Now, as you remember, Al-Qaeda took many iterations and became Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and it became ISIL, and it became this, that, and the other thing, and now it's commonly known as ISIS, and the current president of Syria is a member of ISIS and speaks Hebrew, as reported by an Israeli journalist who saw the ambassador meet with him. Now, the good Sheikh Imran Hussein explains that the Dajjal's warriors are heretics. There's nothing in Islam that says you get to run around and cut people's heads off and blow things up. That's not there's not a single line in the Quran that justifies that kind of activity. Now, it's a heresy. The so-called Islamist thing, the ISIS thing, has really no sanction anywhere in the Muslim world. My sources say that ISIS is being run from a Western intelligence service inside of Turkey, and that's what happened to Syria. Because you can't attack Iran unless you control Syria, because you have to fly across Syria and Iraq to get to Iran. That's what we just witnessed with the 12-day war. So now we have three sets of heresies all operating together in the war on terror. And when you go to someplace like Libya or Syria, they all work together. What? Do you remember there was a young naval aviator who took a headshot below his face so he couldn't be recognized, and he held up a sign. He said, "I didn't join the military to become Al-Qaeda's air force." Do you remember that during Libya? Everywhere we've gone since 9/11, these three groups show up together on the same team. Taliban and ISIS are not the same thing at all. I mean, you go look at the videos. They're making videos right now that are jokes. They have a guy with a thing over his head. And they're like, "Come to Afghanistan." Like they're going to take off his head, and they pull it off. And it's like, "Come to Afghanistan. It's a great place. You can jump in the rivers and play on the old tanks and have a great time here with the Taliban." They have a sense of humor about it. So, okay, back to MAGA. MAGA just woke up and found out that they made a deal with the devil. Truly. They are like in a religious, political, existential crisis that is like played out in, I always reference Gone with the Wind because you can go watch it and, have a couple cocktails, and some consider it the greatest American movie ever. And it starts off with Rhett Butler saying we have cotton slaves and arrogance, and it ends up with the burning of Atlanta and this horrible shot of like Main Street Atlanta is just all bodies, wounded, dead carcasses. It's just a really awful thing to look at. Well, the people who have sold their soul to the Joel Austins of the world just woke up and said, oh my God, what has happened? In a similar way as the Confederacy, right? Those goddamn Yankees will never come down here. They're not, they're coddled, and it turned out something very, very. It took 100 years for the Confederacy. Right there it is, people. That's the Confederacy right there, that big red thing. So the fourth turning people would have you believe, and I think rightly so, they basically argue that we're in 1776, 1860, 1929, 1941, 1968, all at the same time. We've never had gangs. We've never had, other than like Bleeding Kansas or something. This is why this is relevant. We have heavily armed paramilitaries, randomly relevant. We have heavily armed paramilitaries randomly running around threatening people at doing landscaping, doing construction. There's Hispanic men up on the roof, and they're patrolling around them like a group of coyotes waiting for something to drop out of the tree. Now, we have a problem in this country in that we think. Here, we'll just reference a couple more books. Where are my books? Here are my books. I keep referencing this, okay? Because this was written in 91 by my professor. I studied Shakespeare with this guy. And he's well known. He was like interviewed by Charlie Rose, and some of his books are very well received and sell a lot of copies and so forth. But he has this quote, and I got this book again called The American Religion, The Emergence of a Post-Christian Nation. And his argument is, and this is sort of my argument for you today, that maybe evangelicalism went off the rails. And now it's waking up to, oh my God, did we make some sort of political alliance without our knowledge that we can't undo? So here's the quote by Soren Kierkegaard about the revolution of 1848, which most Americans don't know a lot about, but it was sort of like a Civil War revolution thing that failed. So he says, even now in 1848, it certainly looks as though politics were everything. But it will be seen that the catastrophe of the 1848 revolution corresponds to us and is the obverse of the Reformation. What a great... I didn't even know what the word obverse meant. Then everything pointed to a religious movement and proved to be political. Now everything points to a political movement, but it will become religious. And that's where we are. The evangelicals don't know what the hell to do. By the way, this is not like a polemic that I'm for or against them. I'm just pointing out that MAGA woke up this morning and said, what the fuck? And this is thick as thieves. It's in the universities. It's in, clearly, Washington, D.C., every aspect of it. It's in the AI. It's in I saw Carp interviewed the other day, and they said, was Palantir used in Gaza? And I want to leave with that. Gaza is declared by all the world except for the United States and Israel to be ethnic cleansing and war crimes. Sending paramilitaries into people's baseball fields is an act of war. It's an act of war, people. And we don't know what to do about it. The three heresies, as I've just laid them out to be, maybe they can be confronted with some sort of, I don't know, rally of the three great, patriarchal religions, Abrahamic religions against them, or to the very least call them out. But that doesn't get anything done politically. I mean, how hard would it be? Usually when you say that, you mean it's easy. I'm asking, how hard would it be to unseat Lindsey Graham, Adam Schiff, the senators from Connecticut, Nancy? There's no way to unseat these people. There's absolutely no way. You could not raise enough money to unseat them. The only thing that they're going to have to do is basically die off. So we are in something that's not going to be like the next election cycle. This is like the next generation. And in the meantime, this is going to absolutely wreck our finances in the way that Israel was just wrecked in 12 days of fighting with Iran, just completely taken apart. Oil refineries, airports, military bases, infrastructure, the Weitzman clinic, the Weitzman research thing, the port of Haifa. The Houthis are now dropping ships in the Red Sea whenever they want. So, all right, sunshine. What we have here is we have this thing in this country called the separation of church and state, right? And at the time, that appeared to be a really good idea, and it's what made America grow so fast. I mean, Civil War aside. And I heard Gene Simmons say this recently, right? His mother came from the Holocaust, and it was really a touching thing. He said at midnight, we'd sit there together in the living room every night at midnight, and remember how they used to play the national anthem, and then the flag would come on and wave and all that. And she would say, "We're safe now." Yeah. Well, we're not safe anymore. And it's not strictly a secular problem. It's not strictly a political problem. The war on terror has come home. It's funded with $170 billion as of the big, beautiful bill. It was signed by Donald Trump, who people believe was the Messiah going to free us from the deep state. He signed the document. There are three heresies running around the world in concert with each other, basically being driven out of the Middle East because the Islamic world doesn't want anything to do with the war on terror, never has, and doesn't even really retaliate. If there were really Muslims in America that wanted to blow everything up, they would be blowing everything up every day. Most of them are in Detroit and Dearborn. So what I'm proposing, and I've talked to a couple friends about this, and they think I'm rather insane, but I'm going to say it, we need a crusade. We need a kind of a Catholic crusade with a small c, not a big C. I'm not Mark Wahlberg or Mel Gibson, recruiting you to become traditional Catholics. I'm saying, all kinds of people need to realize that we are in a kind of spiritual warfare. Most of the people I see on social media that actually understand the teachings of Christ are people who don't identify as Christian. They're frequently like witches, like sort of like New Age astrology types, and what do they call chakra people and all that stuff. I'm not making fun of them, quite the contrary. I'm trying to that movie Magdalene is like a real mix of like a secular view of what went down, and also, but it's pretty like orthodox in the broad sense. But here's, yeah, I got this right here. Now, if you get on Google and you ask Google or things like it, is the Great Seal of the United States, what is that based on? And it will do everything it can to tell you that that's not Baphomet, but it is. America just woke up to the fact that it's not Christian. And it has a big problem because of it. It is fighting 3 heresies operating at the same time who have control of Washington, D.C. And they're unified in this amorphous irreligiosity called Masonry. Now, if you stare at this long enough or hold it up to the light or whatever, or do a little bit more research on your own, that's clearly the head of Baphomet. I think there's a big statue in Detroit or something like that. Somebody built a Baphomet. Jack Nicholson at the end of The Shining is Baphomet. He's like in this pose, as above, so below. I know this is all weird to you, and I know you're probably like freaking out, but just because you think the world is all secular doesn't mean that that's how the world works, and that's my point to you. We didn't get to ICE rating the batting practice because the pendulum swung to the right. No, that's Mickey Mouse. I just watched Downfall, the end of Mustache Man. It's similar in that is that these people that were running that country, if you want to call it that, were all just completely obsessed with the occult. And the protagonist in the story, she's a secretary, and she watches them like they're having like a party, like the bombs are dropping on Berlin, and they're like drinking champagne and dancing and smoking cigarettes, and she breaks into hysterics, and she said, "This is like a dream that we can't get out of." That's what happened. The evangelicals, MAGA, just woke up and found that they're in a dream that I think we call them nightmares. So I know I just threw a lot onto you. Again, I was going to do this Sunday, but listening to that guy talk about the rapture put such a concentrated the mind, and this is not going to be solved by Dr. Jeffrey Sachs and Fareed Zakaria and Tom Friedman, right? They're the people who always want you to believe, this is all very reasonable, very rational what we're doing. Assad needs to be held accountable. He's using chemical weapons. He's using barrel bombs on his own people. Remember all that shit comes out of MSNBC? It's just a never-ending propaganda. It just a couple days ago they were like, yes, we have to talk about the hostages in Gaza. There's like 300,000 casualties, 400,000 casualties of Gaza. Gaza has nothing to do with 18 fucking hostages. But the American media is so caught up by what I just described to you as 3 inner working heresies working together that we are not just on our back foot, we don't really know how to deal with all this. We're a nation that was built on separation of church and state. The first line of the Bill of Rights is Congress shall pass no law and establishment of religion. I didn't get that quite exactly right, but it's very close. And then the second line is about freedom of speech. And rightly so. They knew that the speech problem was going to happen because of the religion problem. If the Pope suggests sanctions against Israel, in 35 states he could be arrested. Have a nice day.